Hi.
Okay. So, hi, everybody. Oh, thank you. Yeah, yay! Oh, well, everybody's so excited to come learn how to lower their cholesterol. So I'm really glad that you're all here. I'm Debbie, dietitian, John, chef extraordinaire, and we have a few dishes. Our focus this month was on lowering your cholesterol with foods. So what kind of foods do you think lower your cholesterol? What do you hear?
Beans.
Beans? Always beans. What else? Right? Oatmeal, oats. Yeah. You know those commercials where they say, oh, you eat the Cheerios and your cholesterol goes down? I mean, those are kind of true. Plain old oats is better, but yeah. Anything else? So oats, beans. Well, the topic of of my dish today is barley. You know, it's the little known one that didn't have a lot of marketing, so people never pay attention to barley, but it's a cheap grain. You know, we all knew barley from beef barley soup when we were growing up, right? But now there's lots of different things you can do with it.
Well, it's moved into beer.
Oh, well,
Some of
that's
you would
true.
recognize it. That's not low cholesterol.
Oh, that is true. So we're incorporating, John's using beans and produce.
Greens.
Greens to help lower cholesterol. My dishes are barley and lentils and pears. Apples and pears have pectin, particularly in the skins, you know, that you put in jam to help thicken your jam or jelly. So those are good cholesterol lowers. And beans, oats, and barley contain soluble fiber, which is the kind that's been shown to help lower your cholesterol. It forms like a gel in your gut, blocks the formation of cholesterol, and also because it forms this gel, helps carry stuff out that might have cholesterol in it. So that's what we focus on today. So John, I'm gonna let you go first because I really don't have a lot to do, but so you go.
Okay, this is called
It's like
asha rushte, which is a Persian soup. It's a springtime soup. It is sort of the celebratory soup. For it's holiday called the Runes.
back.
And it's,
On the ladder. Right.
when all things begin to turn green. I'm gonna start by doing a water saute of onions and garlic. I'm just gonna cook them clear. This is not something that's a family recipe. This is,
Why not?
well, because my family would probably start with butter.
Oh,
And then there might be some flour, a meatball or two. A little more. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna water saute these to clear. We're not browning them and making them golden, even though this recipe says lightly golden brown. Lightly is a modifier that I don't believe in. It's either brown or it's not. So this is soup. So unless you're patient enough to aim for brown, make it clear because you've got food going. This will take about 5 minutes, maybe less. There's garlic in here already, so we're not gonna, the garlic is susceptible to burn, so keep an eye on this. Make sure, in this instance, I've got enough water in the bottom that it's not. And I think my other range, yeah, pretty.
oh, you want to scooch over? Yeah, here, I'll scooch over. How beautiful that is. There you go.
Better.
So now we're in range. I should say that I'm using, when I cook this at home, the only cans I use are garbanzos. So this is a new experience. These are no salt beans. And it's handy if you're gonna do something like this. have something that you know the flavor of ahead of time, you know, if you're gonna want salt, but you don't want the amount of salt that's in a can, with no salt and no flavor to you, and the best time to salt is after you cook it. Even though the chef's training will say, have this flavoring all the way along and feel that. That's treacherous. So we're getting close to clear. Now, well, two things. I'm gonna add mint, dried mint and turmeric. If you look at the New York Times person who makes this dish, she says 20 leaves of mint. Mint is a standard feature of Persian cooking, so or dry or fresh, 20 leaves or 2 bunches. It's sort of, it's what your grandma taught you. Your grandma in this recipe taught dry mint, so it's what we're going to see here. Turmeric is another thing that I associate with Middle Eastern cooking. It's good for all kinds of things that ail you. For me, it just has a vegetal flavor that I like to add to the flavor. So we're looking clearish. I'm gonna throw that in. I'm gonna throw greens in. Now the greens here are parsley, cilantro, dill, and green onion. And for those of us who are coagulation challenged, this is a lot of vitamin K. So you should be aware of that.
But the whole vitamin K thing is you can have it if you're consistent with it. You don't want to one day eat one of John's dishes and then never have any after that. Because when you go get your pro times, they'll measure and they'll adjust your medication based on how you're clotting. So if we have it regularly, then we're okay. I think a lot of people I've known over the years as patients, they use that whole vitamin K thing as an excuse not to eat vegetables. They won't eat anything green. I can't eat green beans, you know. But no, you can eat that.
And I'm gonna add the spinach as well. And this says 12 ounces. What am I gonna do with 4 ounces of spinach? So we're just gonna use the now. Especially since I think we have more than a cup of the beans. And this is a soup. If we want to complain about density, add one. So we will get that. It's not going to be cheap for organics.
Where'd you get it?
Safely. You know, it's
That's a good price.
Is it their brand?
yeah, it's their old brand.
Oh.
So this when you have fresh spinach, it has not been blanched. This stuff has been blanched, so it's already been pre-cooked, sort of. It says simmer. I'm not sure that I'd say simmer for 40 minutes.
40 minutes?
That's a mistranscription.
Okay.
One thing I would recommend on the recipe here, there's a link, photo the link. So she explains all the background and why things are put in. This is something where once you've thrown it all together, on the going. This is,
If you're gonna simmer for a minute, do you want me to talk? So we'll talk.
yeah, I think I'll just add this and let it to boil and then you're ready.
Okay.
So this is the no chicken noodle or no chicken broth. You can get straight veggie broth. It's probably good to have your own broth.
Notice how he's pouring it. He taught me that. That way it doesn't splash up on you.
Yeah, if you do it like this. First, and it's probably easy to pour. It's a little thing.
It's an important thing.
It kind of is.
Yeah.
So I can cook without an apron. I can cook with an apron because I know this, but when you cook, it's without an apron. So we'll bring this up to a boil and then so.
Okay, so you know how he said for his recipe, like go to the link. Don't do that for mine. It turned out to be the lamest recipe I've ever pulled off and given to Linda. And I got it was from 12tomatoes.com. I was trying to decide what kind of dish to make, and Linda said, because eggplant is one of those foods that's got soluble fiber. She said, oh, include eggplant. I thought, oh, that should be fun. So I looked for a recipe with eggplant and barley and come up with this one. Only it's horrible. It says use a can of crushed tomatoes. Well, how big? I don't know. It says use lentils, brown or red. I don't know. Barley, 1.5 cups, cooked or not. I don't know. So we've been winging it. Ashika really helped me pull it all together here because I was losing it, not knowing what to do. So because we didn't want you to sit here and just watch it cook, we just kind of put it together. We sauteed some onion and garlic first. And then I had already cooked some barley, and I had actually cooked some lentils. And then Ashika convinced me that maybe we should use red lentils, which was a fabulous idea because I think those blend in very nicely. Remember last time we made some red lentils? Remember, lentils are cholesterol lowerers also. And so the red lentils don't have a skin on them, so they cook very, very easily. So she whipped those up in no time. And then the barley, who here's cooked with barley before? Ready? Very few people. You know, it's just so little known, barley, and it is one of the cheapest, best foods to lower our cholesterol. So I cooked it, and usually you cook like 1 to 2, or like a cup of barley to 2-3 cups of water, and you let it boil for like 30 minutes. That's pearl barley. They've taken the outer husk off. And when we are eating our whole real foods, the most intact are the ones that they haven't done that to. But it's not easy to find hulled barley. I get it at Winco in the bins, but couldn't make a trip to Winco. So I used pearl barley. So I cooked it last night for about 30 minutes. And so then we just threw those ingredients in here. What I loved about this eggplant recipe, though, was that it called for roasting the eggplant and the onions first in the oven. So they're just cooked. So you just throw them in, and it really was pretty easy to come together. Now, if you are trying to do the hulled barley, if you can find it and you want to try it, it just takes longer to cook. That's all. Now, so I combined all those. What did we use, Ashika? We used basil and oregano, and then we sprinkled some parsley on it. And then we just let it heat up. We used the low sodium vegetable broth, and we used crushed tomatoes. You know, the recipe called for a can. And how many times have you found a can of crushed tomatoes that isn't 28 ounces? It's very rare. So we used about half this can, just in case, because it was getting kind of tomato. So we decided it tasted pretty good. We thought, like most anything I make, it needed a little salt. So then John suggested we add a little vinegar to it. So we added some red wine vinegar. So you guys will have to be the judge of how it is. Okay, John, you need time?
No, we're still going here. It's going to be another 5.
Okay, I'll just keep talking. You know, I just want to even shut up. So another recipe that I brought, and I'm just going to heat it up before we serve, is oat groats. Now, who here likes to eat oatmeal? We eat the rolled oats, right? Or the steel cut? So oat groats would be the whole intact top dog of the oats. So it's the one that's got more fiber, but it also takes more cooking time. So just like my barley, where they pearled it and they took the hull off. So if you can get groats, oat groats, it has a little more fiber on it because they didn't take that off. But I don't know about you. I don't want to take 45 minutes to cook my breakfast. So I found a recipe and I thought it was pretty good. And you take your oat groats. Again, I get them in the bins at Winco. They're not easy to find. Probably at the co-op they have them, or at KP, but they're in the bins at Winco for cheap. And then I put them in my water, boiled it in my saucepan for 1 to 2 minutes, shut it off, put the lid on, and let it sit overnight. And then in the morning, you just heat it up so the remaining water cooks out, throw an apple in it so it gets a little soft, some cinnamon, sweetener if you like to use sweetener, and now your breakfast is ready. So I think people don't use the groats because it takes a little bit longer and they're not raw. So this way you just cook it the night before, you don't even cook it. You boil it for 2 minutes and let it sit overnight. So I felt like that was a pretty good, easy recipe. Should I go to my salad?
I will, what I think I'll do is I'll add the water and the noodles and then come back.
Okay.
Okay, so this is now a pretty green broth. It's looking a little too thick. It's 1.5 cups of water. Now, the recipe says break it into 3 pieces. That's a magic of 3s. When you see her video, she breaks it in half. So 3 is just enough. This is soba, and this is a buckwheat noodle. And it's a linguine style. The noodle is the part of this ritual that, because it's a spring thing, it implies long life.
So you don't want to cut that up into thirds then? With
You
long-
want it to fit in the bowl or in the pot. So this will also thicken the soup. Usually the soba noodles I get buckwheat with wheat. Probably to make those of us who have never seen them before buy them and cook them sort of the way you cook a wheat noodle. So now we're just going to let this cook for 8 minutes or so until it's soft, and then we will add the final ingredients, which is, we call it cash, which is a fermented milk, kind of a yogurty type thing. In this instance, it's cashew sour cream
Fun.
with a little pumpkin
Okay.
and some lemon. And we'll add as much lemon as we want to kind of boost the flavors of the greens. So the recipe says half a lemon. I'm going to have another half sitting around, so figure out how you keep it.
Okay. So just a thing on the buckwheat. So in spite of its name, it doesn't contain gluten. So, you know, some people are gluten intolerant. Some people are wheat intolerant. Some people have celiac disease, meaning that they can't have anything with that gluten in it. And gluten is in a lot of the things that we make. Gluten is in wheat, but it's also in barley and rye. And while it's not in oats, they can get the oat fields can get cross-contaminated with wheat. And so sometimes they say, make sure you get a certified gluten-free oat, which are easy to come by. But for people who just have a wheat intolerance, gluten is the protein in wheat. So if they just have a wheat intolerance, they can eat those other grains. They can eat the barley, they can eat the rye, they can eat the oats without fear of cross-contamination. So just a little aside. So buckwheat sounds like, oh, it must have wheat, but it is a gluten-free product. So for my recipe, that's the pear salad. It's pear and barley, and we're trying to get all of our cholesterol-lowering foods into one bowl, pretty much. So we've got greens. I just use romaine. That's what the recipe called for. You could use darker greens. You could use spinach. I actually thought spinach would be good in the stew too, but I didn't think of it in time. So I'm going to just take, again, I cooked all this barley. So let's say, sorry, I'm getting all fallen squirrels everywhere. So you make a pot of barley. What do you do with it? So one thing is you can make this salad or make it mini salads with barley. This one's kind of a sweet one because it's got the fruit in it. But you could also do vegetables in there and do a vinaigrette on it. And then that would be more of a savory. You can make a pilaf with it. So you have it on as a side dish. You can heat up just this barley that I made, and you can just heat it up in the morning with your cinnamon or whatever you put on your oatmeal, and it would be just like oatmeal. So when you make your pot, there's lots of things you can do with it all week. So a lot of the recipes I found as I was trying to find a recipe for you all, they always say, you know, you're cooking the barley with your recipe, like mushroom barley soup, which doesn't really lend itself very well to a demonstration. So that's why I cooked it first. But let's say you have a pot of barley, and now what am I going to do with it? You could make mushroom barley soup just with your cooked barley. You just have to shorten the recipe a little bit and decrease your fluid a little bit. So this recipe calls for, and tell me when you're ready to go, John. Barley. So I got my cooked barley.
The 5 more minutes,
5 more minutes. Okay.
and got it. Little wires of noodles.
Oh, those are
I,
cute.
I didn't break them up fast.
So then I'm just going to add all the things that my excellent helpers chopped, and they are much better choppers than me. So I think we might have chopped a little too much. One is cucumber. We didn't peel it so that we would definitely still have some of that more fiber in it. I'm just going to maybe use about half of that for now. Then we can add more later. We're going to do, this happens to be an orange pepper. I think I'll use the whole thing, pretty color. And then I'm gonna do my pears. This was 2 whole pears. So the recipe calls for 3 pears. 2 of them you chop up just like my excellent helpers did. I'm gonna need a bigger bowl, I can see that. And the 3rd pear, you're supposed to put in the dressing. But my pears are a little hard today because I just bought them yesterday. So we used canned pears in our dressing, which our little helper Phoenix blended them up with a little white wine vinegar and a little maple syrup and a little Dijon mustard, and then add a little water to get it kind of a drippy consistency. And all my tasters said it was pretty good. It's pretty good too. So I got all this. I've got a little onion, probably this is just red onion, which is so much better than I ever do. I'm going to switch this to a bigger bowl before I actually turn it off, because it's going to go everywhere. And then the recipe called for dried cherries. I think you could use raisins. You could use craisins. The trouble with cherries, right? Has anybody like dried cherries? Gosh, I love the dried cherry. They always had sugar. It's really hard to find without spending an arm and a leg a dried cherry that's just the cherry. But they're so good that it's just worth the indulgence. So I'm going to do those. I chopped them up a little bit, so a little goes a longer way. And then it called for pistachios, another thing that costs an arm and a leg. And I didn't make it to Winco, which is where I like to buy all this stuff because it's so much cheaper in the bins. But Linda had some pistachios, because otherwise you were going to get slivered almonds. Because I was way too cheap to buy that. So after I switch it to another bowl, then I'm going to put my dressing on it. Doesn't it look like baby food? Pear baby food. You know, I bet you could have used pear baby food in this recipe. I bet that would have worked. And then I'm going to mix it all. But I'm going to do a big bowl while John chats you up.
Okay. So to chat you up some more. This is the cache, and it says you can dilute it. 2 things in the recipe. One is to put the dose that's in the base of the soup. And then a separate dose that you pour over the top decoratively and serve it. I'm not one for decoration, so I'm gonna get it all in the soup. This is putting the noodles in. I should have dispersed them a little bit wider because we do have a couple of ropes in here. Which is not the end of the world, but it's not fun. Now, if you did yogurt, it would be, if you use non-fat Greek yogurt, there would be no fat. This is a cashew cream, sour cream. So it's got fat, but it's got fiber. It's not sort of free range fat looking to stick around. This is something you make your own cashew cream, you can make sour cream with an acid like lemon. But if you inoculate it with a teaspoon of yogurt and let it sit on your counter for a day before you refrigerate it, the active bugs in the yogurt will begin fermenting and eating up some of the sins in the cashew cream. This can come down.
You know, I've been into that Height Hill Greek vegan Greek yogurt, and they don't add sugar to it, and about like 17 grams of protein in a serving, and it's really pretty good. And if you like plain unsweetened yogurt,
Cost is the thing.
I know you're right. It's not cheap. It's like $4.99 for 3
Yeah.
servings.
And I'm sorry, what?
No, I think they're just having this.
Oh, yes. On sour cream, it's not something that just you make a meal of. If you treat it as an ingredient, you keep it at its small portion instead of saying pancakes, sour cream, pancake. And make it run into problems if you say, I need an element of creaminess. And you see, I guess you can see that we have a pretty thick cream, and with a cashew cream, the nuts are going to continue to get thick. So I could add more and more water and think I'm set. And as soon as I turn off the heat, it'll begin to get really thick. So now all I need to do is add the beans.
That is a lot of beans. I
Yeah,
love that.
life is good.
Yeah.
So these guys are going to heat up.
Excuse me, what did you say the yogurt was made out of that was vegan?
Almond milk.
Oh,
Well, sometimes you'll see like coconut milk and stuff. Those are so high in fat. So I like that one.
And see, I find almond milk to be, because it is from the nut, it is lacking all the other things that soy milk
Yeah.
brings to the table. And so, and also
I don't disagree. I would drink soy milk if I drank soy milk. If I drank milk, I would go for soy too. But in this yogurt, I like the Greek style. That makes it a little thicker. And I haven't seen it in soy. But it'll be here before we know.
you can
I
make
could
it.
make my own. I
We
know.
can make this.
I
That's the
know.
challenge.
Right.
When we do this was one of my first vegan dishes for vegetarians after a heart attack. And I was just reaching for anything that would be not what I was used to, something to break the rut. And so that was 10 years ago that I found this. And every time I make it, my daughter says, it's spring. Good. It is the kind of thing that you taste it in, when we taste it, it is the freshness of the greens, the beans, everything is just perfect. The other thing that comes just a little later is the jingle of hots,
Oh, so
which is another, well, it's more Armenian and Turkish. It is a Pop-Tart, but instead of jam, it's greens, 12 different greens. And it's airplane food.
you put it in a little dough and it's really, really good. I call it Jingle Bell Hats, but I think the way he said it is correct.
Okay, well, this is going to be ready. I'm just going to take it down.
Okay, I'm gonna put my dressing on. All right, so I've got all my ingredients mixed up in here. It turned into a pretty big salad in here. We tried to double, and now I'm gonna use my dressing. So this dressing doesn't have any oil in it. take all of that. That barley is really going to absorb it. Okay, so if you were gonna make a pot of barley, this would be a perfect combo, pot of barley, a pot of beans. What are you gonna do with it this week?
Give it to your neighbor and make steak.
I know a lot of people might do that, you're right. That's probably what my husband would wanna do. And I know you'd want to bring these gals home to help you do all the chopping. I appreciate it takes a lot of chopping to do this. Okay, what else, anything?
Can't you chop in those Cuisinart things?
You totally can, you're right. Yeah, sometimes it depends on how much, like the onions, you could have done that in. The cucumbers, I'm afraid they get a little squishy. You know, but yeah, I like those. And I love a recipe where you can just keep, like throw your onions in the Cuisinart, pull it out, throw the next thing in, pull it out, and just do everything in that pan. You never have to wash it or anything. But yeah, you can absolutely do that. And some people I know have those cool box cutters. Does anybody have that? It's like a slicer dicer, and it's a box. Like you put your onion in it, and then you push this thing down on the top and dices it beautifully. Somebody I know just got one, and they thought it was the best thing ever. But I am all about the gadget.
It's one more thing to have
It is.
in your box of toys that I use once a year.
Well, I do have that cupboard that holds those things. You were right. Okay, my salad's pretty done. Now I'm gonna sprinkle my pistachios on there. I hope we like this salad. It's really pretty.
For me, it's the happiness. Once you get going, if you invest in a knife that you like, you trust, it feels good, a good cutting board. It's so much easier, so much, you can just enjoy chopping because you're gonna do a lot of it.
That's true.
And if you have something that is sharp, it can be resharpened. It's a whole lot more fun. And it's part of why these knives are here, is that there were some really dull knives.
Yeah.
So this is my favorite kind because it's a lot like a cleaver, and I was cooking with a cleaver for quite a while. But the chef knife, which is also here, again, it's the weight, it's the ability to keep it sharp, and then just be fearless. Go for it. It's life-saving.
And the thing about chopping your own is that you only have two things to clean. You have the cutting board and the knife. But sometimes I won't pull out that food processor because I think, oh, I don't want to have to clean it, or the blender or anything like that.
I don't mind cleaning it. I just hate getting it out.
Yeah, you were right. I know, mine's way down here. Yes, I hear you. I hear you.
Well,
So we are talking about foods that you can add to help lower your cholesterol to what you're eating or substitute what you have. But it's also about what you don't eat. So if you think, yeah, that looks great, but I'm never gonna do that. Maybe barley's not my thing, or that soup. And I can't believe this was your first recipe becoming like plant-based, because that's a big recipe right there. That is good. But you could just cut back on things that do raise your cholesterol. Saturated fat, trans fats, animal products, which contains most of those, foods with cholesterol. So sometimes you'll see a study and they'll say, oh, like chicken is okay. It's better than other things to lower your cholesterol. That's because they compared it to, say, beef or something with more saturated fat. So in comparison, yeah, it looked better. So the further down we go on the chain to whole real plant foods, the less we're going to have a high cholesterol. And I was just listening to a podcast today that talked about how lower cholesterol is good, but what's even better is having it low all your life. So for some of us, that horse is already out of the barn. We're going to, do what we can at this point, and that's good, and it makes a big difference. But we need to be starting even our kids and our kids' kids on foods that aren't going to raise their cholesterol, because they find plaque in younger and younger kids these days.
eat salt.
They salt. I think that's what everybody says about anything I make. Yeah, it needs a little salt.
Yeah, I rather than the shake, I think I go with liquid aminos
Oh, okay, we got that.
because that'll distribute things quickly.
Okay.
You can find it.
Yeah, I just saw it earlier. Well, the coconut.
Yeah,
That what you want?
yeah.
Oh, it looks like we have the other one in here too.
That's not an issue.
These are kind of sweet.
This is salty. And it is not as, I've seen comparisons where they say it's not as salty as soy sauce. Well, it's because they're comparing apples and oranges. It's this, it's salty. I'm not gonna put in a ton. But probably a couple teaspoons. I'll leave it here. Some people will want a little bit more of an edge than I put. This is ready. And the beans are soft. The noodles are the noodles.
To get some gold.
Yeah.
Over here. Mine pretty too. Okay, what else do you want to eat to help lower your cholesterol? Or what do you want to eat less of to help lower your cholesterol? That might be the way to go here.
Butter, eat less.
Eat less butter. Okay, perfect. Okay. What else?
Please.
Cheese? So we could eat less cheese?
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's an excellent idea. Yes.
What I hate.
I think to make this change, this lifestyle change,
Yeah.
sometimes the cheese is the hardest one. It can be. Yeah, okay, what else? Eat more over, eat less of. What are we gonna do? Anything? Eggs? Ooh, okay, I like that. We're gonna eat less eggs. One egg has more cholesterol than we really should have all day. But some of the studies have shown maybe it doesn't raise our cholesterol that much, but then they looked at those studies and they were really, the egg organization put those studies in place. So maybe it wasn't really quite as accurate as it looked. But yeah, I think cutting back on eggs is a great idea.
But isn't it the yolk? that has-
The yolk, thank you for saying that. The yolk has the cholesterol in it. You're right, the protein, the white part does not. All right, what else? Any changes? What are you guys having for dinner tonight? You know I'm gonna ask this every time I'm up here. Anybody know? I'm having tacos. So I'm having beans. Nobody else knows?
I know,
Okay, what?
well, I eat different.
I know, it's fine.
But, I make this thing called pepe al cacio,
Oh, yeah,
and it's really, really easy to make.
okay.
And I've taken to cooking, I could buy little cubes of squash and cook them in there. That's really good.
That sounds good. What else goes in it?
Well, it's, I use, egg noodle, gluten-free egg noodle.
Uh-huh.
And then, cheese, a pecorino cheese, which is cheese. And, olive oil, salt and pepper, and I put toasted black sesame seeds.
Fun. Okay, that sounds good.
It's dangerous.
Do you think that would be good with dark pecorino?
It could be. Could be. Our pecorino is almonds, and cashews, and nutritional yeast, onions, miso, mustard powder, and salt.
That sounds good.
It's really good.
It's dangerous.
Yeah.
It's really good with greens. I love that every morning.
Now that you're saying that, I'm thinking I could even put nuts in there instead of cheese.
Yeah,
Cheese. Nut. Well,
And that's another way to think about things is what can we just tweak a little bit? What can we just swap out a little bit to change our profile of the foods that we eat more plants, more whole real foods, less of the other stuff that might raise our cholesterol. Okay, John, we ready?
kind of. Is that too big for you?
No, I have one.
Oh, you
I
have,
have one. Yeah. And I'm heating up, I just made a one serving or one recipe of the oat groats, just in case you've never had it and you wonder, well, is it worth having a groat or not? I don't know. But it's just a little bit higher in fiber, and they're a little chewier. Like, you know how rolled oats are creamier. So these are just a little chewier. So you might like it, might not. That's why I thought I'd bring it so you could try it and see if it's something you'd want to have. And I think we better eat. So thank you guys for coming. We have a great crowd today, and thank you to my students who helped cut and chop and put everything together.